Hello and welcome back to Why Such a Fuss. We are joined today again by Annie McNeely, who is an ISO 9001 practitioner. Hello, Annie.
Hi, Christina. How are you doing?
All right, good to have you here again.
Thanks for having me.
Good. Right, so Annie, in today's podcast, we're going to talk about change management and why it's important in any organization, large or small. In this particular podcast, we're talking about change management, not as the people change management, but more of the technical process side of change management. Now, as human beings, we are driven by emotions. And 10 times out of 10, we make decisions that are based on emotions and assumptions. And then we discover later on that we made the wrong decision and we regret it because facts have come to light. They have actually highlighted some, additional information that if we known that at the time, we would have made a different decision.
Yeah.
So really, change management is a process that has clear steps and clear requirements that are designed to help a business to make an informative decision that is based on facts rather than emotion or assumptions. It also ensures that the quality is not compromised, both in terms of business as usual, so compromising the business as usual, but also in terms of the change itself. So whatever the change is, going or applying a change management process will then ensure that that change or that project is successful. Now, when we carry out the change management process, if we do it correctly, it will uncover risks that the change might bring, and any change will bring an element of risk, so that the organization can determine how to mitigate those risks as part of the change implementation. As I said, with any change comes risks, so much so that the GDPR provides us with a tool called Data Protection Impact Assessment, DPIA for short, which will help us to identify those risks related to data protection, obviously under the GDPR. If I take the post office, what's happened with the Mr. Bates versus the post office program, which is based obviously on reality, if the post office had carried out the DPIA as part of its change management process, it would have discovered that Fujitsu employee could access the postmaster's account in the Horizon system without the postmaster's knowledge, and they could have done something about that. The suffering of over 500 postmasters and postmistresses would have been totally avoided. And all of this, scenario in terms of money having to be given back and recompensated to these individuals, which they totally deserve, all of that would have been avoided. Their lives would have not been destroyed, their reputation, et cetera, et cetera. Now, as I said, change brings risk, and that is true, but it also brings benefit. And if those risks are known, they can be carefully mitigated, they can be managed and controlled, so there is no reason for not implementing a change. When done correctly, change can be a great benefit to an organization and can bring great rewards. So this is the power, in my opinion, of change management. My 30 years experience actually is evidence of this, both in working in corporate prior to starting my business, and also now as I run my business and working with my clients. Those that have embraced and implemented the change management process are much more mature than those that haven't. Yeah. What's your take on that, Annie?
So, as you rightly say, change involves risk.
Yeah.
And risk-based thinking, although it's not one of the 7 principles of quality management, is an overarching principle for the ISO standard. So change management in the ISO context is very much about reducing, minimizing risk. Now, the focus, when we're talking about risk in the context of quality management, we're talking in terms of ultimate risk to to quality. And by that, we mean risking a negative impact on customer service, a negative impact on the quality of our product or service. Those are the things that we're ultimately looking at. And whilst the details of your change management process, and you must have a process for this, a documented process for this under ISO, it's one of the requirements. The details of that might change, but fundamentally, identify what it is you're changing and the boundaries of that. So what's the scope of that change? Be specific. And then, as you rightly say, what are the risks? What are the benefits? And then how do we control it? Who's responsible for what? What are the timescales? What are the costs or the practicalities of it? Once you've carried out the change, you review it. There might be further actions to reduce any further risks. And usually there will be a sign-off process once you've gone through the various steps to say, yeah, we've carried out this change. We've handled everything we need to handle, and we're okay to sign that. We don't need to do anything further. We can draw a line under that and sign it off. It's really important to be clear about what it is and why you're changing what you're changing. And the law of unintended consequences is always lurking in the background here. And a good change management process should eliminate that. And the law of unintended consequences, if anyone's not familiar with that, the change itself might be a great idea in its original context. And it might, in that context, have a great outcome. But further down the line or further through your business or in other departments, it might end up having a negative outcome. So that's what we're trying to avoid. And I encountered this last week. This is quite a good example. There's a charity shop. You're probably aware of gift aid, whereby the charity I think it's a tax reduction thing. So if you donate something to a charity shop, you give them your gift aid card, and they swipe that, and I'm not sure exactly what it does, but it saves them money. They get more profit, basically. So I made a donation after several months of not being able to make donations because they were too full and couldn't take anything. I took something to the charity shop and I gave them my details. I didn't have my card with me, but I gave them my details for gift aid. It transpires that my gift aid registration had been cancelled because I hadn't donated for a certain period of time. But the reason I hadn't donated for a certain period of time is because they were too full to take the donation. So head office had made a decision that any registrations unused for a certain period of time were going to get stripped out, which at their end probably made sense. But on the ground in the shops, it was causing havoc and taking time and wasting time and putting people off and so on. So what seemed like a good idea in that one context actually was having a negative effect for the customers on the ground.
Yes, and absolutely. So when you are implementing a change, you've got to look at the end to end. You've got to look not just at the immediate,
the whole picture.
Yeah, you've got to look at the whole picture. Now I've got something similar with a client of mine where they wanted to introduce automation to a specific step within a quite big process, and that particular step was quite manual and very, it required a lot of manpower. And while on the surface everything looked fine, when we then looked at it into more details, what we realized is that actually, yes, it solved that particular issue, but then it would create an issue further down the process chain. So something else that is currently automated will then actually become manual. So in the end, they were not achieving what they were trying to achieve.
So discovering those outcomes isn't necessarily a reason for not carrying out the change. It just means that you're aware of it and you can manage that bit, and you might need to adjust the change slightly. Like if this charity's head office had said, okay, we're going to say if it hasn't been used for 3 months, we'll put a note on the system, and then if it's still not used for another 3 months, then we'll shut it down. Something, so a compromise that still gives them the ultimate benefit without causing this chaos on the ground. Or look at the branches and see which branches are, have storage issues, because that's what it came down to. That branch doesn't have enough storage to take donations every day. Yes. Yeah. So pick out the branches that have got more storage and do it there. there are options, right? But by understanding those outcomes, you can manage them as part of the change.
Yes.
And the other point I think,
and you
that's
can
worth
then
making,
sort of look and implement a solution that actually is beneficial all round.
yeah,
Like
holistic. Yeah, be holistic. In a previous podcast, we talked about a process approach.
Yes.
And actually, if you've got an effective process approach through your business and documented processes for your business, that supports change as well. Because apart from having a process for change management itself, when you're looking to make a change, you can look at what processes are affected by this. And you can review the steps in the processes that are affected by the change. And that will, very often, that alone will flag, okay, hold on, if we make that change, that bit of that process is going to be affected. You've got something that you can refer to and work through. Without those documented processes, you unless you know those processes inside out in your head, which is unlikely, you're not going to pick that up.
Absolutely. Totally. Absolutely. So excellent. Annie, how can our audience get in touch with you?
So they can find me on LinkedIn under my name, Annie McNeely. They can Google me and they will find AMC ISO Services, which is my business name. Or they can go to my website, which is anniemcneely.co.uk. And my email address is annie@anniemcneely.co.uk.
Fantastic. Thank you, Annie. And if you would like to know more about GDPR, you can contact me at info@cvgsolutions.co.uk. Alternatively, want to follow me on social media, you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, or through our website at cvgsolutions.co.uk. Annie, thank you ever so much for joining me again in this podcast.
Pleasure.
And hope to have you again soon.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Christina.